Hello, readers. Welcome to reading class with me, Miss Taylor. I'm glad you're here. Alrighty, let's get started. Are we ready for reading? Do we have our textbook? Check. Do we have a bookmark or a pencil to follow along? I mean, a bookmark or a finger? It's kind of early. Miss Taylor's not awake yet. Do we have our workbook, which right now is a packet, and a pencil? We're going to remember to track with our finger, to read each word carefully, and pay attention to end marks. And some of our goals for today, we're going to read with accuracy and expression. All right, so we're going to read correctly and add some feeling to our voices when we read. We're going to understand what's happening in the story. We're going to make connections to characters, feelings, and events and things that are happening in the story. We're going to enjoy the story. We know reading is thinking. There's so many things going on in our brain, so we'll just keep that in mind as we read and try to notice our thinking, and then it helps our thinking grow when we become more aware of it. So we want to keep thinking about that. Alrighty, before we have our new story, we have a new vocabulary sentence. So let's see. If you would like to follow along in your textbook, this is on page 367. And our new sentence is, visibility was miserable in the fierce blizzard. Ooh, we know about blizzards here in Minnesota, don't we? Yes. So visibility is how well you can see things. If the visibility is good, you can see well. If the visibility is poor, it's not good, then you can't see very well. All right. Something that is very wild is fierce. Ooh. So what would we call a very wild animal? Yeah, a fierce animal. What would we call a very wild ocean? A fierce ocean, yes. And miserable is another word for terrible. Oh, miserable, terrible. This word makes me think of when I'm sick. So some of you, I'm sure, have gotten sick before. And when you're sick, you don't feel good. You just feel kind of miserable. You just want to lay on the couch. Miserable. Alrighty. And a blizzard is a snowstorm that's very windy and very cold. And we have those sometimes in Minnesota, don't we? Sometimes in January or February, we have blizzards. Yes, big snowstorms that are windy and very cold. Alrighty, so our sentence is, visibility was miserable in the fierce blizzard. Makes me want to go inside and cozy up with a good book and stay warm and safe. All right, now I'll say the sentence and then your turn. Visibility was miserable in the fierce blizzard. Your turn. Nice job. All right, nice job, second graders. We have our word list for today. Let me see if I can scoop me out of the way here. All right, so we're going to read about supplies for the race. That is our nonfiction part of our story for today, and then the big race. But before we read that, we have some vocabulary words. So let's take a look at our word list. Fingers ready. And we are on page 121. Please follow along with me in your own book. 121. Word one is volunteer. What word? Yes, a volunteer is a person who does a job without pay. A fireman who works without pay is a volunteer fireman. So what would we call an assistant who works without being paid? Yeah, a volunteer assistant. That's right. All right, word two. What word? Well, I should say it first, actually. Word two is blizzard. What word? Yeah, if I was trying to remember how to spell this word, I would say blizzard, but we say blizzard. But yes, so blizzard again is a cold storm, cold, windy snowstorm. Not windy, windy. All right, let's see. Word three is weary. What word? Yeah, another word for very tired is weary. So you might say, oh, I'm feeling very weary tonight. I'm feeling very tired. All right, word four is photo. What word? Yeah, photo, like a picture, photo. And word 5 is Sweden. What word? Nice job. And Sweden is a country that's part of the land that the Vikings once ruled. Oh, we learned about the Vikings in history. So let's see, everybody, what's a country that's part of the land the Vikings once ruled? Yeah, nice job. Sweden. All right, let's try those again the fast way. Volunteer, blizzard, weary, photo, Sweden. Nice job. All right, column 2, all of these words have ed. They have the ending ed. And sometimes the ed will say different sounds. And when we have ed as a phonogram, when we learn it in spelling class, we say ed, t, past tense ending, ed, t. Sometimes it says ed, like the first one, competed, right? Sometimes it says ed, sometimes it says d, like the second word, amused. And sometimes it says t, like the third word, mushed. Yeah. So ed, d, t, past tense ending. All right. So number 1 is competed. What word? Yeah, nice job. Things that compete with each other are in a contest with each other. If plants compete for more sunlight, they're like trying to inch up and get the sunlight, then they're competing with each other for more sunlight. All right, so compete is like if you're in a contest and you're trying to sort of get something before someone else does, you're competing, or do something before someone else does. So if you were competing in a race, you're in a contest to see who will win the race. Competed. All right, word 2 is amused. What word? Yeah. So when someone amuses a person, it makes the person laugh. So we could say the clown amused the crowd. And that would mean the clown made people laugh. It made the clown made the crowd. The clown made the crowd laugh. Amused. So if someone makes you laugh, you could say, oh, you amuse me. You make me laugh. You amusing. You amuse me. You make me laugh. All right, word 3 is mushed. What word? Actually, mushed. Mushed. Past tense of mush. All right, and word 5 is dedicated. What word? Nice job. Let's try the fast way. Competed. Amused. Mushed. Dedicated. Nice job. And column 3, let's see, column 3, word 1 is Mr. Martin. What word? Hey, we have a Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin is our PE teacher. Do you think it's the same Mr. Martin in the story? Let's see. All right, number 2 is feet. What word? Yeah, and this number 2 is not the same as the feet that are connected to your legs, connected to your ankles. This kind of a feat means amazing things that people do. So if you do something amazing, it's called a feat. Like walking on a tightrope would be quite an amazing feat. So something that you accomplish, something that you do that's quite amazing is called a feat with an EA. The other kind of feat is spelled F-E-E-T with E-double-E always says E. And those are the feet that are connected to your ankles. Alrighty, word 3 is events. What word? Word 4 is courage. What word? Word 5 is unties. What word? Nice job. Let's go ahead. We're going to scoot over to column number 4, and we'll do these the fast way. Endurance, challenging, Hoover, demanding. All right, nice job. And remember that endurance is a word that means perseverance. You keep going. You don't give up. You use your fortitude. You have endurance. And I think they're going to need endurance for the Iditarod, right? Yes. So let's take a look at page 121. Part B is called Supplies for the Race. Fingers ready? The rules of the Iditarod require each musher to bring along supplies that are needed for the musher and the dogs to survive under severe conditions. The rules require the musher to have an axe, a good sleeping bag, snowshoes, and enough food for one day. Okay, so that's probably a prudent idea to make sure that the mushers have what they need. So an axe, what would that be used for? Maybe cutting down a tree or some branches so they can maybe build a fire. A good sleeping bag, that's important, so they can sleep and be comfortable, cozy, warm. Snowshoes, that makes it easier to walk over deep snow. And enough food for one day. So if it's enough food for only one day, what can we figure out? We can do some inferring, some figuring out. Where are they going to get the next? I should say, well, I guess we know they're going to have to get more food because we know the Iditarod lasts more than one day. I wonder where they're going to get the food from. Do you have a prediction? Think about what we already know, those stops along the way. Remember what those are called? Checkpoints. Let's keep reading. The sled must have at least 2 pounds of food for each dog and 1 day's worth of food for the musher. So 1 day's worth of food for the musher and 2 pounds of food for each dog. Ooh, we could do some multiplying. So 2 pounds for each dog. If there were 10 dogs, how many pounds would the musher need? 2 times 10, 20, right? What about if there were 12 dogs? 24, right? What about if there were 14 dogs? 28. What about if there were the maximum number of dogs? 16. Nice job. 32 pounds of dog food. All right, the rules also require the sled to have enough room to carry at least one injured dog. So if one of the dogs gets injured, the musher has to make sure that he or she has room on the sled to carry the injured dog to the next checkpoint. All right. Let's go ahead and look at part C. And part C is called the big race. Oh, here we go. Oh, and before we start, remember the last story, or the last part of this story, Chad and Susie were at the vet. Remember what the vet told them about Chugger? Yeah, that Chugger might have a problem with her hip. The vet wasn't really sure, but the vet said, well, if it were my dog, I probably wouldn't let them participate in the Iditarod. Chad didn't talk much in the truck as he drove back to Susie's place. Susie could see that he was thinking about what to do with Chugger. She didn't say anything. She knew that Chad had to make his own decision because he would be the one who would have to live with it. The only dogs that are more important than the wheel dogs are the lead dogs. Susie knew that Chad did not want to replace either of his regular wheel dogs because they worked so well together. They're kind of like little teams, little partners or pairs that work together. Because remember, the sled dog team has like 2 dogs together and then 2 dogs and 2 dogs. As Chad drove, he said, she hasn't had any problems on the practice runs. A few minutes later, he said, neither of her parents had hip problems. So Chad is really thinking, it kind of seems like he wants to bring Chugger along. He's like, well, she hasn't had any problems on the practice runs, and her parents didn't have any problems with their hips. A lot of times things like that kind of run in the family. When the truck was about a mile from Susie's place, he said, I'll make a decision tomorrow. That's kind of a good idea. Sometimes when you have a big decision to make, you want to kind of wait and think about it and then take your time and not make a rushed decision. When he dropped Susie off, he said, I've made up my mind about Chugger. Oh, so this must be the next day. I'm going to keep her on the team. I think she'll be fine. What do you think? Is she going to be fine? I'm not so sure. How about you? Later that evening, Susie thought about the adventure that Chad was going to have. As she thought about the Iditarod, she looked at a photo on the wall that showed a smiling woman surrounded by sled dogs. The woman was Susan Butcher. She had entered the Iditarod 17 times, And she actually finished it 16 times. Wow. So she entered the Iditarod 16 times and she finished it. No, that's not right. She entered the Iditarod 17 times and she finished it 16 times. And it is quite the accomplishment to finish the Iditarod. It's quite a difficult race. All right, and her name was Susan Butcher. Not only did she finish the race, but one time she came in 3rd place. 4 times she came in 2nd place. This was an amazing feat for a woman who competed against the greatest mushers in the world in an event that required courage, strength, and incredible endurance. Remember, that means you could keep going and use a lot of fortitude even when you're exhausted and really weary and have to overcome a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges. Even more amazing than her 4 second-place finishes was her first-place finish in 1986. And she also finished first in 1987, 1988, and 1990. Susie wondered how she had done it. 4 first-place finishes in what has to be one of the most challenging events a person could enter. Wow. So that is quite a feat. So everybody, how many times had she finished in 3rd place? Once. How many times has she finished in 2nd place? 4 times. And how many times did she come in first? Also 4 times. Wow. More than 75 teams were ready to start the Iditarod. The weather was miserable. The temperature was near freezing, and a thick, wet snow was falling. So it's near freezing, and freezing is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And there was wet, thick snow that was falling. Kind of a miserable weather to start. The dogs were panting. They knew they were going to start something that was very demanding. It's going to require a lot of energy and effort. The race had started at 10 a.m., but it hadn't started for all the mushers. One musher started at a time. In fact, the first musher who was called to the starting line had died earlier that year. Oh. After calling his name, the announcer explained to the crowd that the race was dedicated to him. So there was someone who was training for the race, who had already signed up for the race, and something must have happened and he died. And so they announced his name and said the race was going to be dedicated to him. Remember, that means in honor, something done in honor and out of respect for a person. So they're thinking about this person. 2 minutes later, the first musher left. Everybody cheered. Some of the dogs barked and howled. Others just looked around panting. 2 minutes after that musher had left, another musher started. All right. So they're letting one musher go, and then they wait 2 minutes, and then another musher and his sled dogs, his team of sled dogs will go. So why do you think they do that? Yeah, probably so they don't get all like tangled up, and it's more of a calm way to start the race. Musher number 16 amused the crowd, but he didn't do it on purpose. So he made the crowd laugh, but not on purpose. He had tied the back of his sled to a pickup truck. Tied the back of his sled to a pickup truck. I wonder why he did that. When the announcer called his number, he mushed. The team pulled hard, and as they crossed the start line, the dogs were pulling the pickup truck along behind them. The announcer said, "Now there's a team with some real power. Think of how well they're going to do when Mr. Martin unties them from his truck." Everybody laughed. So I'm kind of thinking maybe he was getting ready for the race and he tied them to the truck, but when he was getting ready, and it sounds like he forgot to untie them from his truck. So they were like pulling the truck. Wow. All right. Please go ahead and read the rest of the story to yourself. And what I'm going to do for today, I'm going to have you read the rest of the story to yourself. Because Miss Taylor, this video is getting long. I'm going to go ahead and tell you after you finish, you're going to reread the story one more time on your own, answer some questions at the end of the story, complete your workbook, and read for 20 more minutes. I would encourage you to read the story, to go back and reread the story carefully, because there's a lot of information in this story, a lot of information about the supplies the mushers need and the big race and kind of what happens and how they start the race. So you might need to read a little more carefully and pay a little closer attention to some of those details. All right, so have a wonderful rest of the day, readers, and I will see you again soon.